So if you like the idea, like many other chess players do, of being able to outplay your opponent with beautiful positional chess, this is the right video to click on. We're going to be talking about the Catalan opening, which is a great fit for any players who are already at a quote-unquote intermediate level and want to be able to explore this side of the game of chess. And in this video, I'm going to showcase 4 games I have recently played online against players who are about in the 22 to 2300 rating range, and we are going to see some of the following things in action. So on the Semi-Slav setup, does white go knight bd2 or knight f d2? We're going to discuss this. In the Slav setup, does white go knight c3 or bishop g2? Another interesting point. And in Benoni setup, does white go for knight c3 or c4 in this position? Also interesting. We are going to discuss all this and much more in the video, but without further ado, let's get right into the first game. Alrighty, got another d4 game. Let me readjust the mic, should be all good. And yeah, we're gonna go for very early knight f3 g3 as per usual. And yeah, let me just make sure this is all right, the recording. Yep, looks good. So I had to wait quite a bit to get a game in the pool, especially as you get up to these higher ratings in rapid and you're not going for something like 10-0. Yeah, it takes a bit more time, but because I'm explaining stuff while I'm playing these games, I'm not just playing on my own. Yeah, playing with increment definitely helps so that I don't get flagged in the process of trying to play these guys. But anyhow, yeah, he's already thinking quite a bit, and yeah, probably not super familiar, I imagine, with this early g3 move order. It can catch people off sometimes if, for example, you play c4 immediately and maybe they play like one of these sidelines where like they go a6 and they don't just like develop their knight, and that, for example, is slightly annoying for a Catalan player if they play like a very early a6 and they can take and go b5. It's a bit of an improvement upon the lines where they actually develop the knight to f6. When the knight is still on g8, they have like an extra tempo to go pawn grabbing and like hold on to it and whatnot. So yeah, if we go g3 however though and delay this whole c4 stuff, then of course like there's no pawn on c4 to grab and they're sort of left standing there confused as to what they should sort of be doing. But okay, nonetheless, still a bit of a surprise that they've already been spending about 2 minutes after we played g3. Definitely yeah, a big win from a practical point of view, because like 2 minutes in a 10-minute game is like 20% of the time they have, right? Okay, with a 5-second increment, maybe a little bit less, but still, yeah, not the sort of position where you want to be spending this much time. I don't know whether they passed out or something, but okay, we'll come back when they have made a move. Okay, so they finally made a move. I'm not sure what happened there, but with 1 minute left on the clock, they finally played knight f6. Okay, bishop d6. And yeah, so we can, I think let's just castle. I was thinking c4 as well, but yeah, castles first. And okay, h6, quite interesting. Let's go for c4, and I expect them to castle. Okay, c6 is a bit strange, because usually in this line where they go for bishop d6, h6, this is like a very modern move order that sometimes strong players play. And the idea is to be quite flexible. Sometimes you even put the knight on c6, you take on c4, and then you go for the e5 break. Sometimes you go for a fianchetto of b6. But yeah, when you play c6, it sort of just looks like a waste of a tempo, and I don't think it's a very serious idea. That being said, however, so usually when we see this bishop d6 setup, the typical plan of queen c2, knight bd2 often is not as strong. And I think here, because they've wasted a tempo on h6, it's probably fine. But there's another very strong idea you can play when the bishop comes to d6. And that is that you can go for the e4 break, but you can use this knight fd2 idea, or knight c3, then knight d2, then go e4. And the point is when you take back on e4, you take for knight and you also hit the bishop. So one thing I want to discuss real quick is I want to compare this position, let's say, to a position like this that, okay, let's say something like this that can happen in the closed Catalan. Basically, these Catalan setups where black has the bishop buried inside the pawn chain, and instead of ever taking on c4, going for some sort of like open Catalan type approach, they just sort of try to keep the tension, and this tends to lend itself to a bit of a slower game. But of course, it's important to understand that, like, regardless of whether we have like the bishop on e7 or d6, like white's plan essentially remained the same. We're still trying to go for the same pawn break, which is eventually we're trying to go for pawn to e4. And in these positions, typically, I mean, there's a few different ways you can do it, but in my opinion, the easiest way is just go queen c2, knight bd2, e4 eventually. You always want to watch out for, let's say, going knight c3 and running into d takes c4. Like, you can see it's not too bad, but like you do have to be aware you're sort of playing in more of a gambit style now, and completely, you know, you can do this, but not really to my taste. I think this is a bit simpler now. If b6, you can go for e4. Black, maybe their best move isn't to take, but if I open like the Lichess database, for example, you'll see, okay, Masters database won't be most popular, but like in Lichess, it's overwhelmingly the most common. And yeah, these sort of structures, it's very important to understand if you want to play the Catalan opening. I talk about this at length in many of my videos on the Catalan, but especially in 20 ideas you must know on the Catalan, talk about it quite a bit there. But okay, in this position, let's say we try to go for the same thing. Queen c2, knight bd2, looks very normal. And then let's say they go rook e8. Here, I don't think b6 is so great for them, but they can go rook e8. And what they can try to do is they can try to make use of the fact that their bishop is on a slightly more active square. And believe it or not, already, if I open the database, for example, e4, overwhelmingly most common move. But this sort of plays a bit into black's hands now, because they can take. But unlike, say, if the bishop is on e7, they can actually support this e5 break now. And okay, a lot of people go knight f6, and then this sort of gives white what they want. It's difficult for black to really get in either of these breaks, or I mean, if you do, you give up the bishop here, and that's not amazing, let's say. But if they get an e5 now, this is very well supported, and you can see black scores incredibly well in the database. And that's no accident. Like, their pieces are very active. There's no real reason for white to believe they have any advantage. Our Catalan bishop also is being somewhat blunted by the pawn, which is not great. Black is completely fine. So if you do go for this, you know, queen c2, knight bd2 approach, the kind of best way to play is you sort of play a bit of a waiting move like rook d1. You try to wait for black to go e5, and you haven't played e4 yourself. And then you sort of try to give them this sort of isolated queen's pawn, and then try to play more of this long positional game. However, I quite like this approach where we go, let's say, for knight fd2 and knight c3, as I've sort of been showing in this game, or I'm about to if it hasn't already happened. I'm not sure where I'm going to place this in the video. Like, let's say knight c3, knight bd7, knight fd2. The point now is if they try to go for the same plan, we get e4 takes, and we hit the bishop with tempo, and it's a lot more difficult for them to get this sort of break in now. Especially in this position, we can now play bishop to g5, provoke a weakness, and if they try to go for e5, it kind of backfires. In this position, we can take the pawn and get a very strong passed pawn. Even queen takes d5 check, as you can see. The engine saying, though, is very strong as well, and black is very much paralyzed in this position. It's not easy for them to move. That being said, though, again, our opponent wasted the tempo in the game with this like h7 to h6 move. So this loss of a tempo means that like pretty much either plan would actually be strong, but nonetheless, I just wanted to play this plan anyway, just to showcase this idea. But anyways, let's get right back to the game. Which move order do we do, however, though? I think both are probably okay because they've wasted a tempo of h6. If we go knight c3, the point is we have to be keeping in mind this idea of d takes c4 rather. And if you just play e4, you could do that, but I'm not sure how much I like that, as opposed to just going knight to d2, trying to recollect it. And if they go b5, the point is we just go knight takes b5, c takes b5, and then the rook hangs. So they can't really hang on to the pawn with b5, and if they let us recapture, let's say they just castle, then we play knight takes c4, and we have a big positional advantage because we have a central majority. So knight c3, I think, is a perfectly fine move order, and now something like knight b7 castles is probably what I would expect to see. And okay, let's go knight d2, knight b7, and now we go e4. Our typical break in this sort of closed Catalan position. If you haven't seen any of my other videos on the Catalan, just in general, when we have this sort of structure, you know, where black has this sort of semi-Slav pawn formation, this is what we'd call the closed Catalan when they haven't got their light squared bishop out as well. If they have their light squared bishop out on like f5 or g4, that's a Slav setup, that's something a bit different. But yeah, in this sort of position, e4 is a pawn break you want to be going for. If you don't have that, it's not so easy to see what white's plan is. But of course, taking on e4, now we get this sort of Caro-Kann-like structure almost, except the bishop is on c8 and it's quite passive. But okay, we see bishop to e7, and yeah, there's a few things to be thinking about. Probably right now just keep developing is good enough, but we always do want to be looking out for, right, like them just going you know, b6, bishop e7, c5, and activating this bishop, because if we can keep this bishop on c8 passive, we have a very good position, is the way I like to think of it. So of course, if we can keep that bishop out of play, then long term their position is going to have sort of a lot of troubles. But okay, we see knight f6, a very logical move. If we just exchange, then we sort of help activate their bishop, and it also with tempo attacks our pawn on d4. A very typical idea is to go knight to c3 and avoid that trade, but when we go knight c3, we have to be thinking about queen b6, I think. I don't see any other logical moves. If they go like c5, for example, we can go d5, but I think we can also just take, and then that helps open the bishop up on this diagonal. We have a really good Catalan bishop, and they can hardly develop. So knight c3 is very tempting, but queen b6 is slightly annoying. And if we go like queen d2, rook d8, and they start like pressuring this pawn a lot, we can defend it, c5, and probably somehow white is still concretely better. But I don't know, I'm kind of slightly unsure. But I will say knight c3 is definitely the principled move in the position, of course. It's just a matter of really what's happening after this queen b6 move. I should also say though, so knight c3, queen b6, if we just simply have like, let's say rook b1, rook d8 and c5, or like maybe we could have the queen on d2 as well, c5, that could be quite nice. We just have to make sure these tactics don't work because of the queen being on this file, but I don't think they do because we also gain a tempo there. So I'm just going to play knight to c3. We'll see what they do, but I think queen b6 is the only real logical move, let's say. So they play it, and I'm going to go queen to d2. And if rook d8, I think c5 is very important. If they play c5 here, I'm not concerned about that. I think I just take, or I get knight a4 even. But yeah, rook d8, I guess maybe we even have something similar in this position as well after this. If we go like rook d8 here, c5, and maybe then takes, okay, but what is queen a5? That looks garbage. Like, why are they, we even have knight d5 maybe, because then if takes, of course we win a piece with that very typical tactic. So they'd probably have to go like queen to d8, and then at the very least we win the dark squared bishop, and I'm not really sure what they've accomplished. So unless there's some sort of trap I'm not seeing, which I don't think there is, I think knight d5 makes a lot of sense, unless like they have some weird bishop b4 crap, but I don't think so. So let's go knight d5. I think, okay, I just said we might not want to exchange pieces, but I think the dark squared bishop is a very strong piece. I think it would be a big improvement to the position if we were to win that. So knight d5 makes a lot of sense. And as I said, right, if they take it, we're going to take with intermediate check, then we take back on d2, and then we're just a piece up. So the idea is, yes, of course, we now take the bishop, and okay, they've wasted a bunch of moves to their queen. It's not really clear what they've accomplished with their life. So c5 is very tempting, a very typical break that we want to go for, because again, very often we're thinking about like, okay, they want to develop this bishop out somehow. Right now though, I'm not in a rush to do that, because, you know, like they haven't even played b6, and if they do so, this pawn hangs. c5 takes, and this opening of the position only can help white really. So I should say I'm not in a real rush to play in that sort of fashion. There's definitely an idea as well. Bishop d6 is an idea that comes along with this. One thing to watch out though is, let's say c5, rook d8, bishop d6. This position actually can be notoriously difficult to convert if they sack the exchange on d6, because then we have an isolated pawn, and like in general, it's hard to find a good pawn break there. I think we're still better, but it is just something to keep in mind that it's not necessarily that simple to just go bishop d6 and like whatnot. So yeah, I think we are pretty free though to basically do whatever we want. I don't see much counterplay for our opponent, unfortunately, in this position. I'm just going to bring my queen off the c file for now, and sort of just ask them what they're going to do, because I know for us at the very least, you know, something like b4, a4, start expanding on the queen side is a real idea, and eventually maybe go for a break like b5. But white, on the other hand, is not completely clear what they're trying to accomplish. So a6 is a move that screams, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to play b4. There is another idea we have to be watching out, maybe b5 eventually, trying to soften the d5 square. But again, c6 is hanging. I don't think it's very easy for them to like really get that in here. And as you can see as well, they're very low on time. So knight e8, I'm sort of thinking now perhaps d5 is an idea to be considered. I'm not really sure what this move accomplishes. Maybe it's going to d6, we can play c5 even. d5 again, as I mentioned, very logical. Takes. That probably is good. The one thing though I'm hesitant about with regards to that is that it feels like our position is like very dominant, and that right now they're struggling getting their pieces out. If we take this, then it can somewhat help them like get their pieces out, which I don't love the prospect of. So b5, another idea, take. But then again, after all these exchanges, is this really helping us so much? Not so sure, right? So let's go h4, just improving move, expand on the other side of the board a little bit, and sort of ask them what they're going to do. So f3, let's just play another slow improving move. It seems at this point our opponent has resigned themselves to moving back and forth. Okay, they go bishop d7, so maybe not fully, but yeah, very desperate position in general they find themselves in. So let's go king g2, and maybe we can think about g4, g5, rook h1 for instance. Rook c8, they may be preparing to go b5 perhaps. So let's go a5 to clamp down on that idea. So bishop to e8, that is interesting, but that's rather passive. And yeah, again, not really a clear plan that we can suggest for them. So let's just go g4 at this point, trying to go for this g5 advance on the king side. And yeah, they're not really stopping us, so let's just go for that. And again, like, where's their counterplay, right? So we're just going to keep advancing. If they take, that's going to be absolute hell for them. They're going to help open up the sort of the king side files. And okay, they play f5, but we're not going to go en passant, right? Like, look at this knight, it can barely move. So I'm interested in maybe, let's go like rook a2 and bring this rook over. I kind of want to leave this rook here just to protect this pawn. Bishop e5 as well, eventually maybe something to be looking at. Okay, so let's go rook e2. And queen d7 might attack this, but I'm just going to go bishop e5. Now I don't have to worry about this hanging because the queen is no longer protecting it. If they come back, I might go queen to d2 and just back that up also at the same time, not neglecting the b4 pawn. But okay, g6, this looks very passive from them. Maybe they're trying to go for h5 is their idea and just try to lock things up. So okay, let's just take there before they manage to close things up. And now I quite like the idea of queen e3 and sneaking in this way. So let's go for queen e3. Queen e7 maybe they can go for, but actually I quite like the idea there of maybe just going queen to g5. And if they exchange queens, they're not avoiding the trouble, right? Because their king is still quite weak and we have the rook coming around to h1, and they're probably just going to get like mated or something of that nature. So rook to e8, okay, maybe. So I'm just going to play rook h1. If they take on b4, that looks incredibly risky. I can't imagine a universe and where that somehow works out for them. They do a rook g8 there, and maybe they're just hanging on for the moment, but I don't think they're hanging on for much longer than just a moment. So rook g8 I think hangs their queen, so I'm gonna take that. Credit to our opponent though, they were playing on like about 10 seconds for like 20 moves I think, and okay, they run out of time there. We'll briefly analyze this. We'll also get a computer analysis just to see if there were maybe any significant improvements we could have made. But okay, apparently we have 96% accuracy and we made one inaccuracy. What was this? Rook a2. I thought that was a pretty sexy move to be honest, but apparently rook a2 was an inaccuracy. Yeah, sure, okay. I don't really care too much about computer accuracy, it's just fun to get the graph up. But yeah, all in all, pretty clean game. Knight d2 again, nice idea. There is this e5 thing I guess we need to be watching out for. I guess here, because they haven't yet committed the knight to d7, this is protected after takes, because sometimes if the knight's on d7, right, then they lose a pawn. For example, if they go here, knight d7, e5, then there's often issues that they just hang a pawn, right? But I guess because of this weird crap they kind of did that, yeah, okay, maybe they did have e5 in that position, and so maybe it's best just to go for queen c2 e4, huh? And if d takes e4, I was thinking knight d2, but knight e5 is what the computer wants. Okay, interesting. But yeah, once we got to this sort of position, it's already quite pleasant, about +1 advantage. Let's just see this moment. So this was one where I ended up playing knight c3, but yeah, the computer also gives like an equally big advantage to some of these other lines, but definitely when you allow that trade, it definitely does make the position a little bit more difficult to really squeeze something out of. So I think knight c3 this, and I was mentioning, right, if rook d8, I think c5 maybe is the way to go. But okay, apparently the computer absolutely despises this after queen b4. Okay, fair enough, I missed that. And then rook d1, bishop takes e5, and we're losing material. So there was definitely something to my concern. So a3. Okay, well maybe rook b1, rook d8, and what's the idea now? Oh, okay, and bishop e5, c5, I guess. I was thinking takes, but knight to a4 here. Wow, okay, and this is not easy to see from afar. If takes, you get takes, and then you get queen g4 check, and you win a pawn out of this whole thing. Well, actually, they win it back, but then structurally speaking, they're worse. And again, the Catalan bishop is very unpleasant. But okay, yeah, instead they played queen a5, and I think knight d5 was about right. We take this. I didn't even consider bishop c7 or knight c7, to be honest. They're probably transposed, but okay. Yeah, once we got to this position, again, as I was mentioning, right, c5 looks very tempting, but I think if you go for this, I mean, okay, it's still around +1, but you have to be careful. Black doesn't just like establish a fortress and then like you can't really break through. So I kind of, you know, refrain from going for that. Okay, we mentioned something about b5, and interestingly enough, even though it loses c6, I saw the computer wanted to somehow go for it anyway. Ah, okay, interesting. So this is an instructive moment. So in this position, white is being threatened with sort of having our light squared bishop being traded off. And we need to follow up very precisely, because if we just go takes, for example, c5, then we suffer from the fact that our light squares are quite weak. And sure, we might have this cute little passed pawn, but long term our king might be kind of weak. They might have the pawn rolling down. They blockade the light squares quite well in addition to that. So the way to really maximize white's advantage, it seems, is to go for d5 takes. And then notice how in this position compared to this one, right, like the light squares aren't as big of a concern. The queen isn't on this annoying diagonal. The knight doesn't really have this d5 outpost. I mean, like they might sort of have it now, but it's quite different, the dynamic of this sort of position. But okay, I think after this, right, like it was difficult to really imagine much for them. a5 was a small little detail. Let's just say we play like, I don't know, rook c1 or something. b5 I was like maybe slightly annoying, because again, takes. And okay, takes is quite precise, actually. I was thinking the other way, but yeah, again, like bishop c6, and here it's not even a pawn sacrifice. Something like this we'd want to avoid, so a5, and I know not all those moves are forced necessarily, but okay, we give up the b5 break a little bit, but I wasn't really sure b5 was ever going to be that easy to play anyway, because the bishop was sort of protecting the square. But yeah, once we got in this, the position's quite passive. And let's just go to the end where we were sort of breaking through, but okay, they played this rook g8 move. What if they say go like maybe knight g8, for example? Okay, so basically there's a few different things the engine is suggesting, but in all of the lines it seems to want to get this rook into the game, move the king out of the way, and then I assume eventually go h5. But first of all, you need to get the last sort of piece that's not really participating in the game into the attack, and only then you sort of go for h5, because for now it's a little bit difficult to quite see, like, okay, our position's really good, but even for me, I'm like, I don't quite see how we finish them off. But okay, let's say rook e1, I don't even know, like rook a8 maybe, rook g1, they bring the rook back. I guess they actually can go here, I forgot there's not bishop f6 anymore, but okay, like if we say get to a position like this, then now we can finally go h5 and we're completely killing. Also, if like rook h1 here, say they take on b4, h5 appears to be completely winning here. If takes, I was, oh, okay, right. So yeah, for some reason in my head I was concerned about rook g8, but we kind of mate them first before that really becomes an issue. So yeah, anyways, quite instructive, cause Catalan game to sort of see like how to like really punish your opponent when they're so passive. We've dominated them on one side of the board, but very often we continue. Once we restrict their light squared bishop or their breaks on the queen side, it's very often possible to start going for the king side stuff as well. Okay, let us begin. So playing quite a few 2300s, got the guy's profile, checks out. Okay, I don't know, to be honest, I'm not very paranoid of cheaters, but like this, I feel like there's been a lot of videos on YouTube recently of people being all like paranoid and stuff, and like saying everyone's like cheating. This is a huge problem. Personally, I don't think I've ever had a huge issue with cheating. Could just be a skill issue from other people, but Yeah, I don't know if that's like more of an issue in the lower rating ranges, but like I do have people occasionally like, okay, maybe it's a bit suspicious, and eventually I get like a rating refund, but I don't know, I don't really like overthink it. I feel like a lot of the people I lose to online, I kind of like, they sort of like maybe just a tricky tactically, but I never get the feeling of like I'm really getting comprehensively outplayed. Like sometimes when I'm playing someone who's a little bit stronger, sure, but yeah, in general, it's never been a huge issue, I feel like, at least for me personally. But maybe some of you would like to chime in the comments and tell us your life story about how cheaters have ruined your life. But okay. Anyway, so far in this game, feels like it's been pretty straightforward. Well, I will explain a few things. So like, first of all, you will observe I have gone for this knight c3 move order. And basically the point of this is that like, fundamentally you have to understand, whoa, that's aggressive. And if we go h3, what's the point? Like h4, okay, maybe they sack here. But this feels a bit like, it feels like this sort of playing hope chess where they're like hoping we make a stupid move. When if we just play the normal, like, yeah, like what are they gonna do? Like 95 and like sack a piece and take some pawns? Like I don't think so, right? This looks pretty stupid. So yeah, I will say though, so in this, like fundamentally you have to understand the Catalan setup against the Slav for a long time has sort of been considered like not so great. And I see a lot of players mess this up, and this sort of gives this a bad reputation for white against the sort of Slav setup. You have to understand if you just go bishop g2, castles, b3, bishop b2, black is equal. Black is absolutely fine. So what you got to do here is you have to go for something concrete early on to punish the bishop coming out early. That could be queen b3 targeting the b7 pawn, which is not defended by a bishop. It could also be knight h4 as I played in this game. Both are valid ways of going about it. And as you can see, because we play knight h4 chasing after the bishop, we have won the bishop here. There are some other moves for here white, like bishop e4 for example. D takes e4 is even an interesting one, giving up the bishop, but changing the pawn structure a little bit. But yeah, bishop g6 is probably the easiest to play against. You just go take. And you need to be slightly careful here. You cannot go bishop g2 immediately. I say you cannot. Take it with a grain of salt. You technically can, but you have to be careful of d takes c4 winning a pawn there. So I like to go queen d3 first. I think this is the strongest move. And only then go bishop g2 and try to eventually prepare e4. But the last time we played this, actually we analyzed it afterwards a little bit, and it generally seems a little bit stronger to first of all keep the tension and try to get black to make some sort of central like reaction in the center first, get them to release the tension before us going for e4. I did also make a comparison the last time I talked about this. I'll make it again though. So there are some positions in what we'd call the closed Catalan, where we still have the bishop on the c8 square, right? And in those positions, e4 is sort of the like typical plan, you could say. However, in the positions where black has already gotten their light squared bishop out, e4 tends to not be, it's still a decent idea, but tends to not be quite as strong. And I think one of the reasons is that after takes eventually, c5 is an idea white wants to play. And when the bishop is on c8, c5 tends to be very strong because it shuts the bishop in. But when the bishop's already gotten outside the pawn chain, they tend to not have that issue as much. So anyway, we see rook to c8, and rook to c8 is an interesting waiting move. I don't know why they're not castling, to be honest. Maybe they're suspicious of something going on there. But yeah, we could go e4, but maybe also something like bishop to f4 makes quite a bit of sense. I think like I saw a grandmaster game doing something like this, so it's interesting. Maybe takes knight d5 is an interesting reaction. So I'm going to play b3, being able to take back with the pawn as well, before I like develop the bishop out this way. Or maybe developing it to b2 is also a kind of option we have. But okay, we see queen to c7, so I'm going to play bishop to f4, I think gaining a tempo here. And if they go bishop to d6, I am going to retreat to d2 temporarily. And the idea sort of is that I don't actually really want to trade the bishops off, because we have the bishop pair. And when one side has the bishop pair, the thing that's strong about it is you control both color complexes of the board. So if you trade one of those off, then you lose control of one of those color complexes. So from that perspective, I don't really want to play bishop takes d6. Of course, here they've moved the queen, so therefore actually end up having the big upside that they didn't even really try to challenge our move. They've just sort of wasted another tempo. With the queen, I'm going to keep developing, I think here is a sensible way to go about it. And yeah, really, our opponent is under quite a bit of pressure already. They really lack like a pawn break is their sort of option. Like if they go bishop a3 or something, try to play with their pieces, that also isn't too scary. I think we just go rook to c2. And yeah, shouldn't be a huge problem. I should also mention, right, I was talking about this whole bishop f4, bishop d2 thing. Like, why not just go as well? Okay, well, now that they're playing knight h5, we're definitely playing bishop d2, I think. Unless somehow we're winning material along this file, but I think just go probably bishop d2 for now. Yeah, so like why even entertain this whole thing? Why not just go bishop d2 immediately? And I think that definitely that's an option, but I think there is some merit in dragging the bishop to d6, potentially so that we can like gain, when we play e4, the threat of going like e5 and forking this bishop on d6. Even though it looks like we've dragged the bishop to a more active square, there is some logic in sort of doing that whole fancy looking maneuver. But okay, now that they're just like messing around too much, they're not actually like developing seriously and whatnot, I quite like just playing e4, just really trying to take the initiative, grab the bull by the horns, and just going all out here. So probably d takes e4 is the most logical way to respond when I am going to probably play knight takes e4, capturing towards the center with a knight. If we take the bishop, knight gf6, slightly annoying. I don't really want the bishop to be under attack, but yeah, so takes, I assume knight gf6 there, and we can keep the tension. We can take maybe an interesting option, which I'm also considering though, is knight to g5. And this looks very interesting because the knight on g5 does a couple things. One, where we're making use of the fact that we have a space advantage. And generally speaking, when you have a space advantage, you don't want to trade pieces so much. So knight to g5 from that perspective avoids a piece trade. And we're also really getting up in their face here. They're really saying, well, okay, I'm just going to sit around your king side. What are you going to do about it? And it's not very easy for them to answer that because like their pawns are doubled, right? So they don't have that simple answer of just going h7 to h6. But okay, they finally have castled, and now I'm going to start considering h4, I think is quite a logical move. This also helps support knight g5. Perhaps we'll go knight g5 without them first playing this, but yeah, I quite like this idea in general. And another thing about knight g5 is like, what's so special about the knight being here, right? Well, another point is that sometimes we can smash in on e6 and then take on g6 and absolutely obliterate their whole kingside structure. This feels like a very thematic idea in this sort of position. So I should also mention again, like in the background of all of this stuff, like we're hyper focused in the king side, but big picture perspective, right? Like it doesn't feel so easy for them to really break out of this little bind that they're in. Like c5, for example, hangs b7, e5, maybe slightly better, but they have to be careful about opening the position up so quickly like this, because again, we have the bishop here who does opening the position favor, the side with the bishop here, obviously. So it really does feel like, to me, a bit of a difficult position like our opponent is in. Maybe they'll try to go for like knight h7 or something to try to kick the knight out, but that actually has a danger of its own. You might want to try pause the video, figure out what to do in the event of that. I definitely have something in mind there, but okay, assuming you've taken a bit of a think, I would guess probably, at least intuitively, I would just take that and then go h5. And then it's very difficult, maybe impossible to defend against this sort of threat and just, you know, doubling the g pawns. They can potentially go like here, h5, f5, and then take the king, but yeah, like come on, right? That has to be bad. So e5 though, we were talking about this briefly, but I don't see the issue quite if we just take and like take queen e2, right? Maybe knight to d3, but like that feels very hard to believe. And there is also maybe an option of queen to b1, bloody hell, as well. But that would avoid the potential issue, because one thing I was running into with takes queen e2, knight d3, I guess we could also go for the endgame. But one thing here that was annoying me was that if we try to like move the bishop out of the way, then there's knight takes c1 and they're not actually pinned here because they gain a counter attack on the queen there. But if we go like queen b1, let's say, and for the same thing, that doesn't exist because the queen is on the square or it can't really be attacked via any sort of intermediate move. There is also queen c3, which is interesting, and it looks slightly counterintuitive, but I was missing with queen b1 the one benefit of queen e2, which was attacking the knight, right? But like c2 or b1 doesn't do that, but c3 it does. And they still can't go here, I believe. So yeah, I'm just going to go queen to c3, I reckon. It looks quite strong. You avoid a lot of these weird intermediate moves. And like, you know, maybe after this we can move the rook or something. And like, maybe it still works. I think they might get like some knight b4 stuff or something like that. And sort of keep the position a little bit weird, which I don't want. Like, but with queen c3, I just eliminate any like potential hope of that sort of counterplay. And, you know, we still keep the essence of what it is that gives white the advantage in this position. The bishop pair, really the bishop pair, I think is the big aspect of it. It's an open position, the bishop pair matters. And like queen c7, for example, bishop f4 is just one position which really... Oh no, did we overlook? Okay, I think I overlooked. Bishop e3 takes... Oh no. It takes a knight to e2 check. So this guy really, I don't think he is, look, I say this without trying to come off as too offensive or anything, but yeah, he feels like he's quite tactically oriented, as you could see from like this sort of knight g4 moment earlier on. Not the best positional understanding, but okay, we sort of see how he could be punished for sort of laying back a little bit there. So never like get too complacent, too comfortable in your position, just because you feel like someone is like, you know, not like they have no positional understanding or something, which by all means I could say that about this guy. But okay, I'm just gonna play rook b1, I think. And I think we should still keep our advantage. Like bishop b4, queen c2, takes, that then lose material along there. So this is just a bump in the road, I think. I don't think this objectively works by any reasonable measure. Maybe they have to come back to like c5, maybe knight b4. Okay, maybe just a3 at the very least there, knight a6, b4. What is a knight doing on a6? It's not very clear. I have a fly buzzing around in my room. I'm getting kind of a bit pissed off at it, to be honest, but I really hate the noise of that fly. But okay. Anyhow, rook to b1, and yeah, basically I don't know, it feels very suspicious, this coordination they have. Bishop c5 is maybe a slight... Okay, even this I think though, like bishop e1 might be the cleanest way to go about it, protecting f2, and then they cannot defend against that to save their life, I think. So yeah, just a good lesson though, always be watching out for your opponent's ideas. You know, like if your opponent goes for something very direct like this, which looks like maybe it should be bad, don't just be like, oh, free piece, and then like hang knight takes c1, right? Like that's the worst thing you could possibly do. I'm sure we've all had moments like that. I definitely have. Yeah, like take a moment, slow down a little bit, and really, you know, however wrong whatever you think your opponent doing may be, just try to like think like, okay, what does the position want from me, not what do I want, right? Because when you start like, you know, placing onto the position whatever expectations you have, bad things usually start to happen. So anyhow though, enough philosophical bullcrap. Knight c5. Can we just go b4? Bishop f4 looks very tempting, but queen e8, like I'm sure that's good, but I kind of just want to keep the options of bishop open. Maybe bishop to e3 as well. One interesting option is like here, you try to bait the queen to c7, then bishop f4. And maybe the queen is a bit worse off on b6, but... Oh, that's another option I missed. I completely missed queen b6 as well. I was only considering queen e8, to be honest. But yeah, I quite like the look of b4. Knight d7, probably. And then there's a variety of things we could do. Bishop e3, bishop f4. These both make sense. At first I was thinking of like c5, but then we allow like the knight into d5. So we have to be a little bit careful of that. But okay, knight to a4. Okay, let's go queen to b3. And if they go b5, then we have a few different things. We could go c5, but if they go b5, I mean, they're not even threatening to do anything at that moment because if takes, the knight was hanging. But yeah, okay, bishop f4 makes a lot of sense to me now, so I'm going to go for this. And they have to do something a little bit passive now. They either go like queen to e8, which they do, or they like move the knight or something. But I'm quite tempted now to go rook to e1, put them in this uncomfortable pin. And maybe bishop d6 is even a threat. But this is a position, right, where I feel like, you know, you could go bishop d6 and like force this sort of thing. But it's probably even stronger to just keep them in this bind and not even try to like cash out, because like realistically, if you look at this position, what can they do, right? It's not very easy. I feel like we can just keep pushing on like all fronts of the board, and only then when the like payoff is like really big are we gonna like try to cash in with something like bishop d6. But okay, we see rook to d8. So another move I'm tempted to play is bishop h3, just trying to like cut the queen off from escaping like that. Rook e2 came to mind, but then I feel like this slightly escaping there. So yeah, I'm gonna go bishop to h3. I could be missing something, but this feels quite strong to me. I guess maybe there was sorry, I've had a bloody voice crack there. I guess there maybe is something like bishop c5, knight d5, bishop d6, but then rook d7. Maybe there bishop h3, but okay. With bishop h3 we also do stop rook d7 altogether. Okay, but rook to e5. I'm very tempted by bishop e3 here, because if takes, that doesn't work. Oh, do they get? No, they don't. So takes, and then we'd take, and we're up too much material at that point. So rook takes e4 does not work. I am almost certain of that. Because takes, and I think we're up like, I don't know how many pieces at that point, but we're definitely up material. That much I can pretty much guarantee. So pretty much they should be retreating, but after they retreat, then bishop c5 is very annoying. Or they go there and they try to like give up material, and that's interesting, right? Because if we give up the knight squared bishop, there are some weaknesses around our king, but yeah, I don't really believe that can be surviving for them. So I'm just gonna take. It is a good practical choice though for them to go for this. I don't think there's anything else that really makes sense. So I was thinking of going here. I guess first of all, I will consider just snapping that off, just trading a pair of pieces, and now going rook d1. And if they go queen h3, I am not sure about takes, because there might be some knight g4 stuff. I guess we have knight f3 at the end, so that doesn't really work. But okay, yeah. Let's just, I think, try to queen up here with the least amount of complications possible. Knight to e4 feels fairly logical. We'll just trade that knight off. We could also just go rook e2 and double up, but okay, this should be, I think, good enough at this point. We just need to make sure we're keeping it simple. We don't flag or anything like that. And as long as we do that, I feel like there shouldn't be too many road bumps that we have. Okay, so now they're not putting any pressure on this pawn, so I kind of want to come here and trade one pair of rooks off. I think this is going to be a pretty trivial win. Also, like, their queen just has nowhere to go, which is another very annoying thing for them. But yeah, if we went like, say for example, rook here, then I think queen d7 is slightly annoying. Stopping here, like, we're still winning, of course, but like, you know, whatever like keeps the counterplay to a minimum is sort of the line that I'm going to be most interested in. But okay, c5. So there are various options. If rook e8, I kind of don't want to allow takes for no reason. So if b5 is also bishop d4. So I'm just going to take first of all, and then I'm going to go rook e8, so they don't really have time to annoy us with bishop d4 there. Okay, so bishop d4, but queen e7 is interesting. Oh no, queen e7 would not be interesting. Oh, that would lose everything we worked so hard for. I'm very glad I saw that. Yeah, bloody hell, that would have been bad. Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, so let's just keep improving. We should be good though, as long as we don't hang any like queen takes g3s. Okay, let's go rook to b1, try to provoke b6, g2, just avoiding any of these sort of cheapos. Okay, let's come around this other way. If they take, we have check, and then we take, so that should be pretty decent. And it's just a small example, right? Like, okay, if they make some sort of small threat, don't like immediately react and sort of like freak out and think that you have to immediately respond to sort of dealing with that threat, right? Okay, h5, sort of breaking this apart. If they go g5, that looks very, very risky for their king. I'm definitely gonna take that. Check, and if they come onto the h file like that, then I think we can sneak around and we can probably just mate them. And if they, yeah, like go queen c6, I think just f3 should be good. Yeah, okay, let's go rook e1, queen c6, and I guess we could also go queen f3 and try to like trade off queens, but I think f3 is slightly better just so we avoid that. But okay, let's give it a check. Let's go queen to e6. I didn't consider that, but okay, let's go queen d5. I think it should still be winning even if we give them the passed e pawn. They don't entertain that though. Okay, let's bring the rook back over here. Are we allowing them to take? I don't know, that looks very risky. Check. No, I didn't throw this away, did I? Oh, crap. If they take, there's a small trap that then that's going to lose. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I almost thought I threw that away at the end. Maybe we're still winning the whole way through, but definitely from like a human perspective, felt like a little bit more bumpy than I would have liked it to be, so to speak. Okay, you can already see the engine's having a field day here. But okay, yeah, overall looks like we were in control for the game for the most part. We never lost our advantage, which I guess is a good sign. Yeah, I did say how I thought this was quite a pleasant position. We also did hold off of going e4 for a bit, but as you can see, the engine also says this is fine. So maybe I was being a little bit too fancy for no reason. The last game I played, in the other video I'll put that up in the card somewhere, I did go for e4 without really thinking, and that was also okay, but I just wanted to try this other idea of sort of delaying it a bit. And yeah, you can see the opponent started messing around a little bit. They started flailing, not really knowing what to do, and put their pieces on strange places. d5 is also interesting, so I guess because their knight isn't controlling d5, we can maybe try to open the position up very quickly. Yeah, that also looks quite good. I think what we did as well though makes a lot of sense. Okay, so this actually was completely fine. There is some like weird line the engine's giving though, which I'm not sure about. So what's this about? So, oh, okay, so there's like some thread on G1, but apparently that's nothing to be concerned about, but at the same time, it's slightly scary. Okay. But yeah, you can see the engine was, oh, okay, and the same idea works here. Or bishop b4, queen c2. And we mentioned this and said how if takes isn't losing, which, wait, even this isn't losing? Well, oh, they have knight b4. Okay, so some weird stuff, but once they allowed like this, then I'm pretty sure this was just like completely over for them. Yeah, and anything that went wrong after this was really on the fault of my technical play. Oh, queen c8. Okay, that would have been a better way to close out the game for sure. Stop any of these sort of checks and then come around like that way. But okay, definitely from an opening middle game perspective, there were like, okay, aside from those few like hiccups around move 20 or so where there was like these weird tactical stuff with knight d3, knight takes f2, I'll need to take a bit of a closer look at that in my own time, I think, to really figure out what was going on there. It feels really weird that that works because all of their pieces are still sort of at bay and they're not really actively participating in the game. So the idea that could even pose some level of problems as we sort of saw feels intuitively quite, or it feels quite counterintuitive rather, I guess is what I want to say. But okay, for now, that's it for this game. It was quite interesting, but all in all, it looked pretty convincing. All right, here we are. So d4, d5, knight f3, and yeah, they go for a very quick c4. I just briefly want to check. Okay, fairly decent player, but yeah, we're going to respond with c4 because, like, yeah, this is sort of the one thing you need to be watching out for when you don't go for c4 immediately, right? Like, there's a decent chance that they might themselves just try to strike in the center with a very quick c5. But okay, nonetheless, we see e6 from our opponent. I'm just going to continue with g3. We could also take on d5, but I'm just going to keep the tension a little bit to maybe confuse them a little bit. But yeah, pawn to g3, pretty standard. Like, yeah, we could take and then continue g3 as well. And okay, no, but we see a very quick d takes c4. So okay, I might have mixed up the theory slightly. So this is actually quite a smart move order from our opponent, because now they have these very typical positions, except like instead of knight of 6 being on the board already on castles, they just get to play knight c6 very quickly and pressure the d4 pawn, which is a little bit annoying actually. And I think black is already kind of equal because of that. So small move order thing to watch out for. Because now, for example, like if we had knight of 6 in castles inserted, then we would have d takes c5 in the position, and after takes we can take the rook, whereas here if we do that, you can see we have to take the king, and that's slightly annoying. So I just want to take a moment to unpack what I was really talking about there. So obviously we saw the g3 happened in the game, and I'll say how this is a slightly inaccurate move order because of d takes c4 and this very quick knight c6. And the position I was comparing this to is, let's say we have this analogous position, and let's say, for example, this often occurs, say, via this move order. There are a few different ones it can occur through, but let's say this position, for instance. And now, like, we can see d takes c4, castles, knight c6, and we see we get a very similar position, except in this one, we've already played castles and knight of 6, and this benefits white in a few ways. There's a few different things we can do. There's a very popular line of d takes c5, and going into this sort of endgame, there's another very popular one, queen a4, knight e5, I've showed in a couple of videos. And for instance, if you know black tries to take this and exchange queens, this is very dangerous. I showed a tournament game I played recently where I won in less than 25 moves from this position, so I'll put that up in the cards somewhere. But you can see already, like in this position, for instance, we go knight e5 now. Like, this position already doesn't work as well, because we're not hitting knight on f6 with tempo. Our king is said to move across to d1. Similar thing if we go d takes c5. This endgame is also not quite as good if we can't bring our rook over to d1 when we recapture, and this just does not look as convincing. The engine eval is like -1 here, and okay, here it's not as bad, but still knight e7, and I guess is pretty decent. Maybe also the knight comes to d5, but if you compare that to, like, let's say the evaluation of this position, it's quite a healthy plus for white, and this one as well. And like, okay, it's not anything too special, but definitely it's better than being like -0.8. So you can just see how that really affects the options that white has available. And so that being said, what should we have done here? We'll probably just take on d5, I think would be the logical course of action. And then after e takes d5, g3, we have is what's known as like a Tarrasch opening, where very often we're going to have an exchange of these pawns at some point. For example, like let's say black takes now, and then long term they're going to have this isolated queen's pawn, which most would argue is probably a bit more of a weakness than a strength in this position, especially with our bishop very directly targeting it. That being said, this is by all means still playable for the black pieces, but okay, I would probably rather take white in this position. But okay, let's get back to the game. Yeah, I'm just thinking briefly what the best play is, because we've already slightly butchered it, I think. And it's like I know this, but I just wasn't paying very close attention to the exact move orders. So knight a3 could be interesting, take, and that might transpose to the sort of normal lines. I'm gonna give that a shot. It's knight a3, try to win this back, and you sort of play it as a pawn sacrifice. Let's say like we have this position, knight of 6, castles, knight c6. There's knight e5, for example, bishop d7, knight a3, take. Put like a board there on the screen somewhere so you can sort of see how that plays out. But yeah, in that line, sort of you see the knight coming around here, knight e5, and you're a pawn down, but you have some compensation anyway. So even though it's not the exact same position, I think that definitely there is some resemblance. So yeah, we're going to try and aim for that sort of general position. Of course, the strategic aim really is to, okay, so just thinking, it's castle. The strategic aim is basically to eventually win back the d4 pawn, and then basically like have the Catalan bishop as usual roaring on this diagonal, and basically have like a big positional advantage. But of course here there's the big question of, well, first of all, we actually have to win back the pawn, so how are we going to do that? And That's $1,000,000 question. Bishop f4, knight to e5, or natural continuations. Yeah, so I'm just going to go knight to e5, activate the bishop, sort of open it up rather, I guess you could say. And yeah, if bishop d7, I'm thinking we can go. I don't really want to take anything yet. I just want to hold the position for a little bit and maybe, well, actually, I maybe could have taken that chance to play like queen to b3. But okay, this is like a pretty normal position so far. We have either rook c1 or queen to b3, I think. Queen to b3 takes the eye off of the d4 pawn, but does really attack the b7 pawn. Rook c1 sort of keeps a little bit more flexible, maybe slightly pressures the point on c6 over there. But I must say, like, no matter which one of these we play, we always do have to be slightly watching out for something like knight to h5 or knight to d5 coming attacking the bishop. There are many positions as well though where we can sort of just allow the knight coming to d5 or wherever and taking it. It does look like it slightly damages our structure, but on the flip side, the knight also gets consolidated on e5. So I'm just going to go queen to b3 for now. I feel like that's not the most accurate move. I can't remember why. And I'm also not sure if we've transposed to the other position I was talking about earlier. I feel like we have. And I feel like the best move for our opponent is to like somehow ignore this, but yeah, I can't remember what that move is, to be honest. It could be something like knight to d5, because yeah, it's not easy to protect b7, right? Like, if you go queen to c8, for example, maybe queen to c8's move, I can't remember. Like, we can just probably play like rook fd1, attack this, or rook c1, line our rook with their queen. It's not a very easy position to play, right? On the flip side, right, if they also go rook to b8, well then, of course, this is one of the pros of having our bishop on the f4 square. It's eyeing the rook, right? And we probably just snap the rook up then, and we're pretty winning there. So yeah, a bit of a tough situation for our opponent to be in. Again, I'm not completely sure what the best move is, but okay, we see knight to d5 in the end. Quite a logical move. The first question I of course have though is, what if we just take? There is also perhaps as well, like bishop takes c6, queen takes, sorry, knight c6, bishop c6, and then bishop to e5. This is a typical idea you sometimes see, bringing the bishop around, trying to attack the pawn. And that's like a very safe option, I feel like, but it is also, of course, worth inspecting, like this very ambitious move. If possible, we would always like to go for the one that looks like it caused the most damage to the opponent. But okay, we might have to briefly calculate some stuff. First of all, rook b8, it shouldn't be a concern because this queen takes d7. If takes, I mean, both this or this are an option. This already eliminates rook b8 and also attacks this. So like my sort of logic is like, okay, I could just try to win this back immediately, but if I'm taking this, winning this pawn, and then I'm also winning that on top, and it's not clear how they're going to stop that, like that looks very appealing, right? So I guess one thing I was thinking of though was if takes, maybe queen c8 slightly annoying. And if takes, I am attacking the d4 pawn, but they're also attacking my knight, so maybe I have to protect that, but I guess the pawn still looks looser, so I'm not sure that's something I should be concerned about. And worst case scenario, I can also probably go for knight takes e5. So yeah, I don't see the big issue with b7. There could also be some weird g5 crap, but I feel like that probably doesn't quite work. So yeah, I'm just gonna grab the pawn on b7. Maybe they're gonna have like some amazing resource that we did not see, but like, yeah, to be honest, I can't quite see it. I feel like that's a pretty safe pawn grab. I am kind of expecting knight takes e5 because like at the moment this and this are being attacked. They could also play knight takes f4, I guess. So takes, then we're probably going to take back the pawn. I don't see another move. I mean, we could also take on d7 or something, but then we have to calculate knight takes e2 check, and like, okay, I think it makes sense to first start off with looking at g takes, then takes, but like at the very least, I feel like knight takes e5, and already there you can see that we're not only attacking the bishop, but we're also running queen takes a8. So, okay, they play knight takes e5 though, so I'm just gonna take back is what I was thinking. Like again, I mentioned bishop e5 as an option, but to me this looks very tempting. If they play knight takes f4, that would transpose to the other position we were just talking about. But yeah, I'm gonna take with the knight, put some pressure on the bishop, sort of see how they react to that. Maybe like bishop to e8, but at the very least then, like, you know, rook ad1 or rook fd1 rather, and put some pressure on the pawn. So yeah, let's go rook fd1. If they take as well, like, you know, we could take back, but we could even play queen takes a8 there, and then we sort of win an exchange, at least it appears that way. So yeah, I'm not so sure how our opponent should approach this position. It's now actually equal in material. I was going to say they're a pawn up, and our pieces are also more active. So yeah, it seems quite difficult for them this moment. I guess they could consider rook b8 now that the bishop on d7 is not hanging, but there is just queen takes a7, maybe rook takes b8, sorry, rook takes b2 rather, and then like we couldn't consider like rook takes d4 even, and maybe the line continues, maybe there's rook takes e2, but I don't know. If you just take a moment to really observe, like in the midst of all these like captures and all this chaos going on, like the state of both sides, like sort of pieces, like look at all these pieces sort of stuck in the corner here, right? Like it's hard to believe that black can play all these moves and still sort of be better. I feel like that's just not really how kind of chess works. There is also, I missed as well, rook b8 takes, and also maybe queen takes d4, hitting the rook with tempo while doing this. Rook takes e2, and okay, we see bishop, sorry, g5 though. I was thinking I'll move the bishop to d2. I did see this option when I was just ranting on a little bit, but I wasn't sure how seriously I should be taking it because obviously it weakens a lot of stuff in their position. But okay, I mean, maybe it should be considered, right? Like the bishop comes here. I guess one thing maybe for them to be thought about, right, is if rook b8 takes, we can actually take on d4 with the queen. So I'm still not sure about that one actually, but there is also bishop c1 is quite an interesting idea, protecting b2 actually, and also keeping an eye on the pawn like that. So that's quite an interesting idea, and it looks slightly counterintuitive, but I'm gonna go for it. It's difficult to calculate everything out, but I have a hunch that this is sort of the right move. We'll check after the game. There's a good chance as well that both of them are okay, but yeah, I quite just like the idea of keeping the rook open on this file. And the bishop on d2, I'm not really sure how much good it actually does, because like, okay, now it is arguably taking a bit of space up on the back rank. It's stopping us from like bringing the other rook into the game, but I just have a feeling that some of the concrete elements here might be a bit more important than that. But we see, so bishop to g7. One interesting idea that popped into my mind immediately was knight to g4, bishop g7 takes, but then I think they grab this and they get two minor pieces for the rook, which I don't think is a spectacular idea. So I'm going to refrain from doing that. But one thing I quite like the look of is just maybe knight f3, and if they go e5, that looks quite risky. For one, this knight is a bit loose the moment they do that, so I probably have some discoveries. They can maybe go like rook b8 takes and then e5, but yeah, I kind of don't really trust that, so I'm just going to go for this anyway. Maybe they somehow are getting compensation there, but yeah, I don't know. It looks a little bit hard to believe, at least for me. So yeah, we do see indeed rook to b8, and my plan was just to take this. And I would guess now we're probably going to see this e5 move, but I don't know, it feels like there's a lot of stuff hanging in their positions. So like for example, e5, knight takes g5, and I think this is different to the other position we were looking at where I was talking about like g4 here, bishop takes, because then like they just took two pieces and we got the rook. But in this one, it's a bit different. But okay, they're trying to go for some like repetition, are they? Okay, first of all, queen b7 was what I was going to do, but maybe queen c5 is also worth thinking about a little bit. I don't see anything too wrong with that. So, oh, wait, is that a problem? No, we probably come back here, don't we? So, oh, wait, hold on. So queen c5, rook a5, queen c2, bishop a4, b3, d3. I am quite skeptical of that, to be honest. I'm not really sure I believe in that. It feels like they have a lot of loose stuff. But okay, I have to at least be sort of cognizant of that being a possibility, I guess. Queen b7 though, I'm not sure I see anything incredibly wrong with. Okay, let's just go queen b7 for now. I can't really figure out what's going on after queen c5. There is also bishop b5 stuff as well after rook a5, queen c4 maybe we needed to look at, so wasn't super sure about that. But if rook here, I guess there's also bishop b5 there. Okay, so I'm gonna go queen a7. I'll repeat one time and I'll think about it a little bit more, but I don't have too much time to think, I will say. So okay, so I'm just gonna bite the bullet. I'm gonna go for this line where we do let them sort of go bishop a4, b3, d3, and sort of, oh, they're going for that, really? Okay, I wasn't expecting that. Isn't queen a3 sort of okay for me now? At least I don't see the clear follow-up. But I was prepared to go for this line where they might win an exchange, but in return, we do have like these extra pawns. I think we'd have 3 pawns. No, it would just be 2. Maybe soon 3 if I take the pawn on g5 somehow, but their kingside is quite weak, or weakened by this g5 move, which would sort of be the premise for our compensation in the event that line happened. But okay, we see pawn to e5. I wonder if I can play e4 here. Looks quite interesting. Maybe e3 as well. Okay, so let's play e3, just trying to open stuff up. e4 might run the risk of this being a protected passed pawn in the long run. But yeah, if they take, that seems quite risky. And if they play g4, oh, I wasn't expecting that. But okay, I think queen d3 might be the only move. There is knight to b4, but okay, I'm just going to go to f1. Looks slightly passive here, maybe slightly dubious, but queen f5, I'm not sure if my queen is getting trapped there somehow, so maybe queen to b3 also would have been a decent option. Maybe slightly less passive, you could say. But if we are just quickly playing this, it's hard to see what, or maybe knight takes e5 as well as another option that jumps out, what the issue could be. So queen b6, okay, they're threatening bishop b5, so let's go a4, stopping that very quickly. This could potentially be an issue, but I'm prepared to sack the exchange here. They could also be taken there. That could also be quite annoying. Okay, so I'm just going to play knight takes e5. This has become an absolute cluster, you know what, of a game, but yeah, bishop here, knight to d3. I don't love this, but okay, take, and queen f2 maybe. Pin is seeming a bit annoying, but okay. So if they go for that one, I'm not sure I'm actually gonna open the game up though. So okay, let's go bishop to e4. And my plan is if takes, I'm gonna play queen to h3 and bring my queen out this way. So yeah, a bit chaotic the way the game has sort of turned out, but wait, is that I can't really take, can I? Because then takes in this pin. Okay, I'm just gonna go king to g2 though. I think probably at this point we're not doing so well, but this is not without hope, let's say. So this is a serious threat. If they go queen, or maybe queen g6 is a playable option. But I think I escaped the worst. I think then I just go take, and I'm like up, I don't know how much. Maybe I'm not up anything. Oh, it would be equal material, but okay, like they have some stuff hanging, the pawn on g6. I also have a passed pawn because they have double pawns. And as long as I'm not in any like immediate tactical danger, I feel like that should be okay. I should be calculating this. So if bishop f6, what happens there? I mean, I can just go here and here, but oh really? Okay, so what if I take? Oh, that's their idea. Oh wait, they didn't go for that. Wait, what? What's the idea? I thought they're gonna queen go take and then take my rook. I'm pretty sure that worked. Like I saw this on the promotion as well, but I think this can't work. Like this is horrible, isn't it? So I give a check. And I take, and you can't go bishop g7 because you hang your queen. So you have to step onto the e file probably, but that looks pretty suicidal. So can I just take this actually? I think I can. So let's take. Because if takes again, you hang the queen, and if nothing else, I can just start exchanging stuff off. And the ending should be pretty good. Not to mention I can go for discoveries anytime I want. I just want to keep that option in the bag though. It feels like this is a case of the threat is greater than the execution. Not to mention this move opens up space for these rooks to come in and give more checks. So yeah, I think this should be queening up pretty easy now. Okay, sure, you'll rook d2 check, but I don't think that leads anywhere. I just step back and then yeah, it goes from here. But okay, this one should not work. If I just play bishop f3, what's the idea? So if I can also just go here first, so queen f2, okay, and should be able to take pretty safely, takes, and yeah, if he doesn't resign soon, I'm gonna go rogue. So yeah, let's go queen f1. Okay, let's just go rook f1. Okay, we give a check, bishop d3, and that, my friend, does not work. Okay. I was gonna really torture this guy if he went further, but okay, he resigns in due time. Okay, well, let's briefly check what went on here. So I'm pretty sure we end up transposing to like something resemblant of like opening theory. Maybe I had, okay, some extra options with b4 because the bishop is on d2, just to show you guys what I'm talking about. So let's say they go like knight f6 here, then d takes e4, then knight e5, and we have this line that ends up looking very similar to the game. Maybe after this it transposes. Let's just see. Yeah, this was a transposition. Castle is queen b3. Okay, that was the most accurate move. I think it's when the bishop is on c5 for some reason. Rook c1's more accurate. Anyways, knight d5, and we took correctly. Takes. So this is all best moves around here. Bishop c1, interesting, is playable. It's saying bishop takes d5. That's interesting. Okay, so I guess queen takes queen e7, and if takes, I guess somehow like white's just better. We give up on light squared bishop, but I guess it's difficult for them to exploit this, which is interesting. But okay, yeah, this bishop d2. Okay, let's see. So okay, it wants us to go f4. Okay, so maybe already bishop c1 makes our position a little bit more difficult to play, even if the computer says it's okay. And yeah, around here, I was looking at, yeah, this line. It's actually funny. It's the top computer line. So this bishop a4, I think this is the only move. Otherwise, they're just like down a pawn, b3, d3. Again, I feel like only move. And you create a discovered attack on the rook now, and you're also doing all this stuff. So I was contemplating between this. I didn't like e takes because then I shot the diagonal off my queen, and I wanted to sort of have access to the king side. But okay, yeah, that being good makes a lot of sense. But okay, this is most critical now. And then this, again, this might just be bad for them. Because I guess, yeah, it's very difficult for them to defend this point. They don't want to let the queen in. If knight f6, you hang the queen. If f5, you hang e6. So it seems to want to go queen to c8. Okay, this is not going to lie. This is already quite a difficult line for our opponent to really see, this whole queen c8 thing. I mean, I feel like bishop a4, d3 is doable, but this is a little bit maybe not so intuitive. Wow, is there going to be a free fold like this? Oh, okay, so once go bishop takes g5 and sack the exchange. Okay, I guess chess is complicated. Queen b7 though. And then, yeah, he got that chance, but then he went rook c8, which I thought was slightly strange. Oh, okay, I had bishop g5. Yeah, I forgot about this idea because his knight on d5 is loose. It felt slightly strange what he was doing, but like, yeah, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. And then, yeah, at this point, okay, I got quite low on time and started probably not doing the best moves. But okay, takes bishop b5. I guess like, yeah, queen e1, knight c2, I can like maybe, yeah, I take here and okay, start tearing stuff up. So probably would have been better to allow that than this whole mess. And yeah, I'm pretty sure this was just bad, but okay, takes queen h3, and I can at least pretend like, ooh, scary, right? And I'm attacking. But yeah, like this line I pointed out with f1, and then, oh wait, hold up, it's even worse than I thought. They're just winning our queen outright. I thought, yeah, okay, I was probably hallucinating a bunch of stuff, but yeah, this all of a sudden we're okay, and we're winning, okay. But yeah, what happened later on, probably not a fault of the opening exactly. Like, we got a pretty decent advantage. That was probably more so to do with my incompetence. But yeah, takes, this is an interesting idea. And then like rook fc1, because I guess that knight had a lot of annoying jumps as we saw into like b4 and stuff. So it does actually make somewhat intuitive sense that we would snap it off actually. Okay, and then like takes. We can even just go like rook b1 takes, and this is like a difficult sort of position for them, not to mention maybe the pawn on d4 could just be hanging in the very near future. Alrighty, here we go. So we have a Benoni on the board, d5. So yeah, the Benoni, one of these openings where we can't really go for like a Catalan. It just doesn't work against Benoni because they're immediately attacking our center, and because they haven't yet spent a tempo on any other moves, like, it's just not good to go knight f3 and keep the tension and let them take, and yeah, just avoid it. So go d5, save yourself from pain, and knight c3. So it's very common to go for c4, but this move order with knight to c3, or just this whole setup in general with going knight to c3, is quite effective actually when our opponent has played what we'd call this old Benoni move order. And basically, instead of, you know, trying to occupy as much space as possible, we kind of use a bit more of our pieces, as we're seeing here, and very often we recapture back on d5 with a knight. And there are also some other setups they can go for, like just d6, knight f6, g6, and they don't go for e6, but this is also quite a common way to play. And now I just need to remember my theory actually. So I'm pretty sure, yeah, in this position we go I think knight to f3, and pretty much, well, first of all, from a strategic point of view, there's this interesting sort of like battle going on surrounding the d5 square, right? And it's why, again, like I didn't take with d5, sorry, with the pawn on d5, I took for the knight. And now if this were like a typical modern Benoni where I had a pawn on c4, I might be weakening too many squares if I took on d5 with the knight, but because the pawn is still back on c2, I can cover up some of my bases, for example d4 square, and put the pawn on c3 instead. And I should also mention here, like, what if knight takes e4? And I am pretty sure that in this position, if they go knight takes e4, that we just have queen to e2. And this is a bit problematic, what we have going on the e files. So like takes, for example, queen e2 if they go f5. If I recall correctly, I think knight g5 is a problem there, and there's a lot of tactical ideas going on here. So okay, knight c6, again there's this tension. Do we take? Do we do something? I don't know. I think bishop c4 again is just sort of the move though. If they take, I think queen e2, so I'm just going to develop the bishop out. Apologies by the way if there's noise in the background, but okay, so now I think this is a moment where, yeah, this pawn does appear to be hanging, or is it? So if we castle, knight takes e4, rook e1. Oh, even then that looks kind of bad for them, because knight f6 we just go take, and then the pawn structure is ruined. If castle's here, bishop f5, then I think bishop d3 just wins material. So I'm gonna take, and they're probably gonna be like, oh, scary, takes rook e1 and not calculate. So even if there is something wrong with it, they won't find that out, I'm pretty sure. By the way, I do believe in this, but I think most likely they'll castle, and then we play rook e1 and we protect the pawn like this without, you know, taking on e4 and releasing the tension. I really want to keep the tension here is sort of what I'm trying to do, and get them to take, sort of activating our pieces for us, rather than us sort of helping them activate their bishop. But even then, it's not that straightforward. Like, we can go c3, bishop f4, hit the backward pawn. Again, this is a very recurring positional theme here. The pawn on d6 is a backward pawn, of course. This, of course, d5 square is also a weakness. So these are sort of some long-term assets that, yeah, white definitely has in the position in our favor. I should also note, I don't really want to take that bishop. It looks like a bit of an ugly piece. I could be wrong, but I feel like most of the time, generally, you would rather exchange this knight for the knight rather than the knight for the bishop. So yes, we do win the bishop here, but I don't think that's of great importance here. So yeah, that's that. Rook e1. I am also considering, do they have bishop g4 there? And like, maybe that pin could be slightly annoying. I'm not sure how annoyed I should be by that, but I think I'm just going to go rook e1 for now and allow it. One idea is maybe, for instance, I can just go like c3, and if they really do go for, let's say, takes knight e5 or something, these piece exchanges often help white actually, because again, they have this weak backward pawn. If we exchange some of the pieces off, this applies to many different pawn structures, but in general, when one side has like several pawn weaknesses, or even just like one serious pawn weakness, like with an isolated pawn, for example, it very often is in the side's favor who is playing against the weaknesses to trade off the minor pieces and then use the heavy pieces later to target the weaknesses. So I'm also thinking of maybe just going h3 to provoke the bishop getter off like this diagonal. It has to choose where it wants to stand. And so I'm thinking h3 perhaps, and if they go take, then I think we just go queen takes f3, knight e5 again, queen comes back to e2. If they go like take knight d4, attacking this and this, I think we can even come back to d1 actually, yeah, and that looks fine. So I'm going to go h3, provoke something out of them. I think most likely they'll keep the pin, but you don't know, right? I also just spotted another interesting idea. So actually, if bishop h5, maybe knight f4 is quite strong actually. And compared to something like g4 that we could play kicking the bishop away, the g4 creates a lot of pawn weaknesses, but if we use the knight to kick the bishop away, we avoid creating a lot of these weaknesses when we do it. Let's say bishop g6, they come around, they take this, and then, okay, they're also attacking the e4 pawn, so it helps in that respect as well, but we just go c3. And I don't know, it feels like we're quite happy in that position. We have the bishop here, but we didn't sort of take their bad bishop. This is sort of their good bishop, I would say, because it protects a lot of the light squares of theirs, which are quite weak. And yeah, I mean, they could also go like bishop h5, knight f4, and then take, but You know, again, I don't think that's a huge issue for us. So yeah, pretty happy, I think, so far with the developments of this game. Hopefully we're getting a feel for some of the like positional themes and dynamics in general of sort of what we need to be watching out for in this position, because generally the theme is right. And let's go for knight f4 now, is that unless there is something concrete that black has, usually these weaknesses just long term are very unpleasant for them, and white always just has a very long lasting sort of positional advantage because of that. So okay, they finally take on h5, sorry, on f3 rather, maybe knight to e5. But yeah, I mean, like queen to e2 is what I'm probably gonna do. There is also queen b3, but that somehow feels slightly awkward in terms of the coordination there. So I'm gonna go, let's say, queen to e2. And again, as long as there's nothing concrete, again, this is gonna be a nice positional advantage for us. They can take and get rid of our bishop here, but again, the minor piece exchanges in general should only really be helping white. Okay, so queen a5, they're obviously trying to cheapo us with like knight c4, queen queen e1. Not very difficult spot in my opinion, but I think we can just go c3, which is a move we want to play often in these structures anyway, and we prevent a lot of these shenanigans. So I guess there is maybe the question of like, is there, you know, like takes b5 and them getting counterplay? Maybe that could be a thing. There is also, of course, just bishop d2, which I don't see anything too wrong with. I don't know why I didn't look at it too much to begin with, but of course if we can just win a tempo, that would be nice. Maybe the idea is queen b6, they attack this, and that's something that they've somehow provoked. I don't know if that's any good though. So let's just go bishop to d2. I don't see what's really wrong with this. I just want to sort of ask them, you know, like what is with this queen a5, right? Like you go to b6, sure, but I can just move here, I can defend it, I can put my bishop on this diagonal, and what's your plan? Does that not trap his queen? I'm confused. Oh, okay. So his idea is that he wants to like take on c2. That still looks incredibly suicidal, but I guess maybe that's surviving. So okay, let's go pawn to b3. I quite like the look of this. Was also a consideration to go for bishop b3, but I'm like, maybe they sort of get c4 there, and that could be a little bit annoying. So I just kind of want to keep my bishop on the c4 square for now. And one idea as well is maybe we can go like a4 after they go queen c6, and we just limit them from going b5. And again, we keep very nice control over the light squares. So yeah, I'm quite happy with how things are developing. So like queen c6, a4, if they go a6, try and prepare b5, then we just go a5, nip that whole idea in the bud. And now this is just not looking good for them, because again, how are they solving their long-term positional issue of this backward d pawn, the weak d5 square? It seems like to me they're trying to go for a lot of these short-term tactical ideas, which ultimately just have very little of a positional foundation. Okay, I'm just looking at our opponent's other ratings to see, like, get a feel of like what their strength is in other time controls. But yeah, I think they really just have to sort of give up any of these weird tactical ideas and just try to sort of get some semblance of like a normal position maybe. But okay, queen to a3. I guess actually, okay, so this might have an idea in the sense that maybe now they're trying to go for a6, b5, but they don't allow a4. So that might have some clever points to it, but they also have to be careful to not get their queen trapped in the process, right? So I'm very tempted to just put the bishop on c3. I think this looks quite reasonable. I can't see an obvious issue with it, let's say. I think a6 is their plan, so I'm ready to see that on the board. And then, okay, I'm going to put my bishop here maybe, or I put my rook on d5, right? And if they ever, like, also as well, I can think about developing my rook to d1. My rook is not stuck defending a2, guys, because then, like, if they take on a2, I'd bring the rook back, and they're just, like, their queen is trapped. So they finally take, I'm taking back. So there was that tension there for a while that we had going on. But yeah, they finally released it. And actually as well, quite interesting is maybe I can think about bishop f6 takes and like getting sort of good knight versus bad bishop. Here I'm not so sure, because their bishop is immediately attacking my rook, and once this moves, then they can take on a2, because, well, if their bishop is protecting a1, or controlling that rather, this rook a1 stuff is just not going to work, of course. So, and also here, if I go rook a d1 takes, now my queen isn't protecting this anymore, so they can maybe take there, and I'm not sure if that completely works for them, but maybe they're getting away with it. Regardless, though, in this position, I think we still have our sort of positional advantage intact. I don't really want to go for a move like e5. Some people may be tempted to do this. If you time it correctly, maybe, but again, then you're sort of getting rid of the whole advantage we have in this position, or at least part of it, which is the d6 pawn and this weak d5 score as well. And now look, if you're ready to cash in, then this can be strong if everything is in the right place, but if you mistime it, then you can throw away a decent portion of your advantage. So I would caution, or put some caution out there when playing that sort of move. A move that's quite tempting to me now is g4, which looks quite committal and potentially weakening, but the point is, if we can go g4, g5, and even get a knight onto d5 with that, I think that could be quite strong. So I'm going to go g4 in this position. We could expect to maybe see h6, but if they just ignore that, go like rook a8 for example, g5, knight moves, h4 protect this, get a knight onto d5, or maybe keep storming these guys further, like that's going to be pretty unpleasant for black rather. And we can really go for this. I want to, or at least I think we can. I could be wrong in the analysis, but at least to me, from my understanding of chess, the reason that it is justifiable for white to play in this manner is that, like, look at black's pieces. They have no counterplay, they have no pawn breaks. The position isn't completely closed. Like, very often this sort of move is common in closed positions, but in closed positions, the fundamental logic is you can play these sort of flank pawn moves very often because of the point that your opponent doesn't have, like, an easy pawn break. But, okay, h6, I was thinking maybe f3 protecting this and then go h4, g4. If h4 immediately, I thought there might be takes. Maybe there's some line where we can actually allow that, but it does strike me as slightly unnecessary. At the same time, though, if we ever play f3, we do weaken this diagonal quite a bit, so we sort of need to be slightly cautious about that as well. So okay, I'm going to go rook e3 for now, I think, and this move has the idea of just potentially bringing the rook to g3 at some point later on, and helping support this whole kingside attack. And now one thing I was thinking about as well is that if they ever move the bishop out of the way trying to attack this, then they always run into take, so I'm not hugely concerned about that. Okay, but is that slightly annoying? Maybe. So let's go rook a e1 rather, this, and I'm thinking if we just go queen to e2, and okay, we can let them, well actually they can't take because rook a1 now when this is protected, but if they go b4, my idea is bishop a1, they can take that, but then we go h4 g5, and okay, so what if they got a pawn on a2, right? Look at the rest of their pieces. They're not coordinating very well, and yeah, I think this is just a recipe for trouble. Because yeah, h4, g5, it's not very easy to defend against. As well, now the fact our queen has remaneuvered around this way, potentially it can come to the king side and cause some extra damage there. So I quite like the look of how things are developing. If they go for g5, which is an extraordinarily committal move, then I think just knight d5, right, and takes, and I mean that triple battery along the e file looks pretty scary, if not fatal. So yeah, I don't see what they do though. It seems like a pretty nasty position. h4 g5 again is simply coming next, and sure, again they can grab a pawn, but it doesn't matter if you're a pawn up if the rest of your position sucks. Like, look at their pieces, right? What is this knight doing? What is this bishop doing? None of their pieces are really, they're all like sort of okay, but they're not actually, functionally speaking, doing much, if that sort of makes sense. So yeah, I actually wasn't super sure about rook e3 a few moves ago, but now after we've gotten all of this in, yeah, I definitely feel quite happy about it, because like, look at all of our pieces, right? They're all pretty active, ready to go. Our opponent, on the other hand, difficult to say the same for them. I was also thinking as well, maybe knight d5 could be an idea, because again, we saw how if g5 and they force us to go takes, that could be quite strong, but even just knight d5 immediately could be quite good. e5 as well looks quite strong. I have a feeling there's like, we're getting into sort of territory where there's many good moves that all have decisive advantage attached to them, but I'm just going to stick to the original idea of going h4, g5, kicking the knight out of this x6 square, and once we're able to do that, then the d5 square presents itself to our knight, and many other good things should start happening. So they attack this, but I kind of don't really trust that. So let's just say I go g5 and I completely ignore whatever they're doing. So I take back, and if they play bishop g5, I quite like the look of, let's say, queen to g4. Rook g3 is also quite a nice looking option, but let's just go queen to g4 for now. And obviously if they take this mate, so they can't quite go for that, I believe. But yeah, how am I continuing this after like bishop f6? Maybe, oh, they go there. Wow, okay. Yeah, as you can tell, I'm a bit surprised. That looks like quite the committal move, let's say. I'm just gonna back this up with rook g3, I think. And again, takes runs into this. And so I'm planning on, okay, I missed that. What is that? Okay, can I go? Oh, I can also take maybe. That looks quite tempting because then I get like very good bishop against not so great, good knight against bad bishop rather, but okay, yeah, let's just bite the bullet. Let's just take this, and okay, let's go knight to d5. Now for an f4. I was thinking they were gonna take for the pawn, to be honest, but I think that makes our life a bit easier what they're doing. Okay, so I'm gonna play f4. I don't see the counterplay that they have. Maybe they're gonna sack the rook, but again, in the big scheme of things, like, where is that leading them? We just take back, and though our pieces are invading, their bishop is still under attack as well. So yeah, I'm not concerned that they're going to be able to take and then like give a bunch of checks to the queen and then like a repetition is going to appear out of like thin air. I just don't see how that's happening. So they go for this, and if we just take this though, like, I don't see the checks. I think this is pretty much winning. Okay, so they go there. Maybe rook f1. Ooh, okay, so let's go queen e6 check. If they block the rook, we get knight f6 and we win the queen. And I just missed, we're also okay, we're also just, that was probably the easier way to go about it, but, okay, they finally resign. Yeah, let's generate a graph for that. I have a feeling we made some mistakes somewhere. Like, it felt clean, but at the same time, maybe, like, there were definitely improvements, I get the feeling, especially once we started getting a bit low on time. Okay, so apparently rook g3 here could have fumbled the advantage a bit. They just go pawn grabbing. Interesting. But okay, all in all, we never lost to the advantage at the very least. So castle's rook e1. Does it want us to go like h3 or something? And oh, bishop f4. Okay, and we can continue just ignoring this because I guess here, okay, and fair enough, maybe we get takes, and takes is the point. Okay, but rook e1, bishop g4. I still thought this was, again, like if they go takes, and for something like this sort of position is always just like a long-lasting advantage. I'm not concerned about playing something like this. We're going to play c3 to kind of blunt the bishop when it comes to f6 on this diagonal. We're going to play against this backward pawn. And sure, it's not a winning advantage, but it's very, very pleasant position to play. Knight f4 turns out to be quite strong. And yeah, they end up wasting too much time, I think. Okay, apparently not the best move according to the computer, but I think it's still logical. There's a clear plan attached to it, and like we keep our advantage, which is the important thing. So, wow, e5. So I was talking about e5 at some point, but okay, yeah, here I wasn't quite expecting that. And if takes, and this is quite strong, it appears. Okay, bishop a1 though here. I was also talking about e5 as well. Just trying to break through, and it looks like this is also winning, which I kind of expected, but okay. And then after you go for this h4 g5, okay, so that's funny, mixing the two ideas sort of together. But yeah, okay, so this was sort of an intuitive sack. I just felt this was the right decision here. Something like rook h3 I felt might start to get a little bit too slow, and you can see perhaps that's true. They start to consolidate on the dark squares a little bit. And okay, this is a very nice defensive resource the computer starts pointing out. So yeah, g5 intuitively felt correct, and then it seems like I didn't follow that perfectly though. So once to go queen h5 and or maybe knight h5. Oh wow, okay, knight h5. You give this up? Well, not really, because mate, of course, and then f4. So that I can imagine would be cleaner, because after this, okay, takes, apparently the only move to keep the advantage, knight d5, f4, and okay, then we were cruising. But yeah, all in all, I think we had the right idea for this game. Maybe some points we could have improved a little bit, but all in all, again, pretty clean game, I thought. Alright, so yeah, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video. Just want to let you guys know, for who are still watching the video, I am planning and currently working on a Catalan course. So if you're interested and want to keep updated on it, I'm going to have a link somewhere in the description below. If you just enter your email address, you'll be put into my email list, and yeah, I'll just send you emails occasionally, keeping updates on the course. And also, I'm planning on starting back up a newsletter that I used to write, but we'll have to see about that one. But anyways, otherwise I have very little else to say. If you guys have enjoyed this, if you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and I will see you guys until next time.